Hi, everyone. Um,
Hi.
I'm Kathryn, and this is Julia. And we are so excited to have you all here today. We're going to be talking about our experiences with OCD and hopefully be able to answer some of your questions. So, I am a 19-year-old mental health and OCD advocate from San Francisco, California, and I've struggled a lot with OCD myself. And I'm going to be sharing my perspectives on OCD just based on my experiences, but not from a clinical perspective. And currently I'm a second year college student. I'm a psychology student, and I'm hoping to eventually become an OCD therapist in the future. So I love talking about OCD and anything related to it. So Julia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Same here. I love talking about OCD. I can talk about it, I feel like, all day long. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Maine. And I've had a pretty devastating experience with OCD. And when I got better, I just thought that I just need to do it. I just need to share my experience and help other people because when you don't know what you're dealing with, it's very hard. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think it can be so powerful to share our own stories with OCD, especially when living with OCD for so long can be so isolating, and especially when it's such like severe OCD. It can be really lonely.
And especially if you don't know what you're dealing with. So,
Exactly.
and that's like exactly what is extremely surprising for me because I feel like OCD has such a great response for like a therapy response, and so many people
Yeah.
that can get better, but nobody's like a lot of people don't know what they're dealing with, so they don't know what treatment to look for, and I've been there myself. I've had a very, very difficult 2 years when I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I'm sure that if somebody told me earlier that it was OCD, I probably would have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of struggles. So
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's the case for so many people with OCD, is it takes them so long to get diagnosed just because the way that OCD is presented in the media and what it actually is so different. So I think that can lead for so many people not to have a diagnosis for so
absolutely,
long and just be struggling without any knowledge of what they're experiencing.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm seeing that there are a lot of really awesome questions here. So I can put one up on the screen and let's see. And then I guess we can both try to answer it to the best of our abilities. Let's
Okay.
see. Okay. Let's see this one. It says, my OCD is severe, and I feel like I have to do the OCD compulsion. Like, I look at all the OCD vids, but it's just like I have to do the OCD compulsion no matter what. So, I don't know if what your experience is with this, but I'm pretty sure um, oftentimes with OCD is it can feel like kind of a life or death situation with compulsions because you feel that you need to do these compulsions just to reduce that anxiety, and you feel so much fear if you don't, do these compulsions. But I think what we learn, or what I've learned, especially through ERP and treatment, is that the more you resist your compulsions, the easier it gets and the better your OCD becomes.
I just feel like OCD is this like constant urge to figure something out in your head. And I really believe that a lot of, even if you have physical compulsions, they always start from a lot of rumination. And
Mm.
that's the case with myself. I know that when I ruminate about something, I need to search, like I really have this urge to search online or to analyze or to ask other people with this goal of figuring out, finding the answer to the question. But here's the trick with OCD: no matter what you do, no matter how much reassurance you're looking for, no matter what information you get, OCD will never stop. So it's a never ending kind of like a game. Like you're always, if you're trying to fight with OCD, OCD is always going to win. The only thing that's going to help you is to really um, re- refuse your compulsions. I know that it's extremely hard. I know how hard it can be, but really you have to concentrate on a long term goal. If you're doing a compulsion, it's giving you a little reassurance for like a short time and gives you this a short time relief. And unfortunately, the more reassurance you do, the more uncertain you become about the question that you have or about the fear or anxiety that you have, and it just multiplies. So just stay strong and start to refuse your compulsions. No matter what it does, your brain is going to escalate it for you for sure. As soon as you try to stop your compulsions, it's going to increase your obsessions temporarily because your brain is freaking out. Your brain just thinks, why are you not reacting to this anymore? Why are you not trying to figure this out? You have to figure this out. Like you're in
Yeah.
danger. That's why it just sends so many signals to you. It wants you to pay attention. It wants you to grab onto this anxiety and try to figure out because that's your survival response. Your brain is trying to keep you protected in just a very weird way. It loves us in a very weird way. So I really like that's what always helps me a lot, and that's just concentrate right now that I'm going to stop doing compulsions, no matter how hard it is. Maybe a thought or a urge or a feeling or a sensation is going to pop up every 2 seconds, no matter, I don't care. I'm not paying attention to this anymore. And you're just staying strong and you're refusing those compulsions. And that's how you're teaching your brain that those urges are not as important anymore. And that's how it stops sending the signal, this distress signal to you. So, and I know that it's very easy. It sounds very easy, just like don't do your compulsions, you'll be fine. I know how hard it is, and I've been through the same thing myself. But it really works, and I can see how it works, and I can see how so many people find this like recovery ERP so helpful. So just try it and stay strong. Just really just push through.
Yeah, that I agree with everything that you said. I think that it can be so scary, especially when you're at the beginning of your recovery and you're just starting to learn how to resist these compulsions and you're starting to recognize uh, what's OCD and how much of an impact it's having on your life. And I think one thing for me that obviously resisting compulsions, no matter what, is going to be hard. It's going to be super, super hard and it's going to be painful and it's going to be anxiety provoking. But I think what has helped me the most is realizing why I'm resisting my compulsions, why I'm choosing to get better, and kind of linking that to these values because OCD takes away so much from us in our lives and can make us take us out of the moment, can take us away from the things that we love, the people that we love. So I think when you're resisting these compulsions, trying to figure out for yourself why you're resisting these compulsions, why you're fighting the OCD, why it's so important to you. And I think that will make it, when you link those values to your OCD and recovery, I think it makes it a lot more meaningful and a lot um, more concrete.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It still is going to be challenging, but it's kind of like a muscle. The more that you work at it and the more that you strengthen it, the stronger it gets.
And also
Okay.
another thing that really gets me is that OCD wears so many masks. It's just like it's such a great actor that can definitely deserve because it's really trying to trick you into your back into your anxiety, back into your old ways. It's really
Yeah.
working hard. So if you think that like, oh, okay, I got this. Okay, I think that I realize that this is OCD. So every time I get this kind of thought or this kind of feeling, I'm just going to resist it. I'm not going to pay attention to this. Your OCD just gets very tricky and it changes the mask and it comes up in a different way with a different question or just modifies the question that you already had or just finding a new little way to get you back into your anxiety. So just be aware of that and just be alert that it's absolutely normal. OCD will do it for you, but that's just because it's trying to do all those things to get your attention, and you just have to show that no, I don't care about this, I don't care about this, I'm stronger than this, I know your game, I'm not going to get into this with you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that OCD is so tricky and so sneaky. Like the moment that you think that you have it all managed and you think that you've caught on to its games and its tricks, then it comes up in a totally different form. And that can really catch you off guard and be like, wait, I wasn't expecting that. Why is it coming up like this? And that can be really scary. So I think definitely, like Julia said, recognizing that OCD will change in the way that it presents, and just to be aware of that when resisting compulsions and in your recovery process. Okay, should we move on to another question?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Do you guys recommend medication and ERP combined or just ERP? Not sure if one is more effective than the other. So I know that Julie and I are both people with OCD. We're not clinicians, we're not doctors. So we can't necessarily speak from a clinical perspective or give that advice, but I can share what's worked for me. And if Julie's comfortable, her sharing what has worked for her. So I know for me, I found, especially when my OCD was super severe, using medication and ERP together was what helped me the most. I know some people do it without medication, but ERP is always the gold standard treatment for OCD and is what has been proven to work. And I can say 110% that it truly works. For me, like I said, when my OCD was pretty severe a couple years ago, um, the only way that I was actually able to do the ERP and engage in the treatment was with the help of like medication, just because I was so debilitated by it and was barely functioning on a basic level. So I know for some people that really helps using both of them, but that would definitely be something to talk to your therapist or your psychiatrist about, just to see what they think is best for you and your situation.
When I look at like medication and ERP, what I think, how I look at it is that medication is something just gets you on the starting line to help
Mhm.
you do the ERP. Because sometimes people with anxiety and OCD, it just gets so overwhelming that you can't even find energy within yourself to actually like pursue this treatment. It can be very challenging and very hard. So I think it's different for like different people. Uh, but I think that I've heard like a lot of people say that combination of medications and ERP is the like the has like the biggest effect. I'm not. I think that it's really different for different cases. But I
Yeah,
do think that
definitely.
it's definitely something that can get you absolutely can get you on the starting line and helps you run the race for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that that's so important to definitely see based on your individual case and what's most helpful for you, and having a clinician help guide you to that place. Okay, let's see some other questions. Okay, this is a great one. How do you deal with OCD that's more to do with obsessing over why you had a certain thought, what it could mean, and the guilt feelings that come with it? So that's a really good question. Do you have a good response?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we were talking about just previously, that your OCD can wear
Yeah.
different masks. So when you start giving when you start giving a little less attention to another topic, or your OCD feels like it's not giving you as much anxiety, it's just trying to find all different ways to make sure that you're stay engaged in this anxious state, that it wants your 100% undivided attention. That's why it's coming up with these little things, with these little feelings. And again, treat the feeling of guilt as a symptom of OCD. You feeling that? Okay, it's OCD. I'm dealing with OCD right now. I'm recovering from OCD right now, and I'm having this feeling. That's a symptom of OCD. and just treat it the same way as you would treat like an obsessive like thought, OCD thought. That's my take on it, because I also like I've had that a lot, and that would help me the most. Um, no matter, I would just for what really helped me a lot is just to ask myself, what would I do and how would I feel right now if I did not have OCD? And then
Mm.
everything else, every other emotion, every other feeling or urge, I would just put in a bucket of OCD symptoms and use the same techniques that I would for just like a regular OCD obsession. So yeah, so just take your feelings and urges and thoughts and images, everything into this bucket and just disregard and move on and live your life no matter how hard it feels, no matter how difficult it is. Just like keep going forward and keep moving on, showing your brain that it is not relevant, it is not scary, it is not important. And even if you have those thoughts or those feelings or those sensations, it's okay, because you're going to live your life no matter what. You're not going to pay attention to that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything that you just said. I think with OCD, guilt can be heavily attached to it. It's definitely a symptom of OCD and should be treated like one. Another thing that I know can really happen, which has happened to me a lot, is when you start to make more progress in your ERP and in your treatment, and you start to feel less anxiety when you have these thoughts, then you start to have anxiety about not having anxiety about the thoughts. So you're like, wait, why am I not experiencing the same amount of anxiety that I did before? Am I a bad person? And that's referred to as the backdoor spike. So OCD just coming to get you again, even when you're in that recovery process, just changing its mask once again and trying to, pull you down in any way possible. But I think the more that you, like we said earlier, the more that you learn to recognize what is OCD and what's not OCD, and also learn how someone without OCD would respond to it. I know for me, one of the big things that I struggle with OCD wise is perfectionism OCD with my schoolwork and everything. So, one of my therapists had a really good way of putting it. She said, aim towards conscientious but not obsessive. So kind of aim at a level where you're still giving it your all and putting in, like, what a conscientious person would be doing, but don't get to the level that OCD wants you to get to, which is the obsessive level. So, kind of learning that there is a significant gap between the two and what it takes to go from one gap to the other. Okay, let's see. This is a great one. How to deal with the uncomfortable feelings that come along with OCD, especially when you don't feel like yourself.
I think it's really like the answer will be very similar. Just treat it as an OCD symptom. And again, what really helped me is to imagine that how I would feel and how what I would do and what I would think if I did not have OCD right now. And everything else just attribute to your OCD. Put it in the OCD bucket and just treat it the same way. Make sure that you don't try to figure out why you feel like that. Don't try to analyze your feelings, because that's all still engaging and putting your attention to this problem that you're trying to solve. It's never going to work because that's just what fueling your OCD. So that's going to work only for OCD. And make sure that you're like, try not to put all your attention into like figuring out why you're having those feelings, if you feel like yourself or if you don't feel like yourself, because I know that some people really get stuck and they just trying to get to this feeling of like relief. They're trying to get to this feeling of just like being sure that you don't have OCD anymore, or being sure that you don't have this anxiety anymore. And the more you're trying to achieve something, the less probability that you're actually going to get it. It's like a lot of people show this example or talk about this example with a beach ball. The more you try to put it under the water, the more pressure you put on it, the harder it's going to jump up. So if you just let it be and sit with uncertainty and say, yeah, I have uncomfortable feelings and they come along with my OCD and I don't really feel like myself. Maybe I will never feel like myself. Who knows? Maybe I will, maybe I won't, and that's totally fine. It's not gonna stop me from living my life. I'm just still gonna do whatever I need to do, whatever I planned, even if I don't feel like myself. And we'll see what happens and we'll see how OCD will react to that.
Yeah, exactly. I think like one of the biggest parts of like OCD recovery is learning how to embrace the uncertainty and sitting with that discomfort and learning that that's actually the way that you're eventually going to gain the most relief. Um, when you sit with those feelings of discomfort and you learn how to tolerate it and you learn how to sit with it and it's important to recognize not to try to analyze the thoughts, not try to dig deeper into the feelings because that's a compulsion. And I think just sitting with those uncomfortable feelings and saying, you know what, this may happen, this may not happen. I may be a bad person. And just sitting with that uncertainty because, and knowing also in the back of your mind that OCD is a liar. OCD loves to lie, loves to tell stories. So, also knowing that you have that little trickster on your shoulder. Okay, let's see. Um, do you see any good questions that you'd want? Sorry, my voice is.
Mhm. Um,
I can put it up on the screen.
so I use positive self-talk at times, like I can do this or not today OCD. It's from Love to Play 100. Yep.
Is that? Oh no, that's a different one.
Yeah, I think that's the
Oh,
one.
that's one. Okay,
I'm just
awesome.
I'm just trying to read it. So I think for this comment, I think I would be trying to be very careful about distracting myself because it sounds to me like it can be like a little avoidance, and when you're avoiding something, a lot of times it can also fuel your OCD. So I think that maybe try not to distract yourself, but maybe to sit with your intrusive thoughts and just don't do anything overly. Don't overcompensate. For example, if you were just gonna sit on the couch and watch TV and relax, and you have OCD thoughts, and now you're running all over your place trying to clean because you're trying to get yourself distracted from OCD thought, I think that that would be also considered as like avoidance and like a way to get rid of yourself of those thoughts. I um i think that that can backfire a little bit because again you're showing your OCD that it's important and it's actually valid. So okay, you're reacting to me, so that means that it's important to you, so I can keep sending you those thoughts and I can keep sending you those feelings. So yeah, Catherine, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that engaging in that positive self talk, I mean, I think there's a difference between showing yourself compassion and towards what you're experiencing and how difficult OCD can be. But then there's also, um, you know, giving yourself that reassurance, feeding into the OCD and trying to, in a sense, like neutralize your thoughts or replace it with a better thought, which in a sense like Julia said, is just feeding into OCD and showing OCD that it's important. So I think that also tends to increase the severity of your OCD when you just give it so much power and so much attention. So I think in a sense, just taking like just letting it be and seeing that it's there, seeing that your OCD is playing a role. I mean, like I saw a different question also, but answering that, like self compassion is so important. when dealing with OCD and in recovery. So I think that's something so important that everyone should incorporate into their own recoveries because OCD and dealing with it is beyond challenging. Like people with OCD are some of the strongest people I know. And the fact that they're like battling their minds daily, they're living with all this fear and sitting with the uncertainty and having these tremendous and scary thoughts and learning how to just sit with it. Like, not many people can do that, but we kind of get to say that we can do that and that we're so much stronger because of everything that we've gone through. So I think showing yourself that compassion is so important, but also learning how to differentiate what's self compassion and what's reassurance seeking or a compulsion. Okay, let's see what else. Some really good questions. Um, let's see.
What about the last question from Clara? Any advice on how to talk to your therapist about a potential OCD diagnosis?
Oh,
I
that's
feel
good.
a lot
Yeah.
of anxiety about admitting to my therapist that I have obsessions and severe intrusive thoughts. I completely understand that. I've had the same thing because I was just very unsure if I do have OCD, and I had so much anxiety around it. I wasn't sure if, like, what if I admit it to my therapist and she says that it's not OCD. And also I would like to share my experience. I actually, before I started seeing a OCD specialist, I was just doing a talk therapy, and when I was trying to explain it to my therapist and share with her that I think I might have OCD because I found this information online and it's very um, kind of like similar to what I'm experiencing. And she wasn't really aware of the whole OCD field. And she wasn't really able to give me a lot of support and a lot of explanation about like what OCD is. And she wasn't really 100% sure if what I'm talking about was OCD because again, she was really aware of like contamination, like you need to wash your hands or you need to be concentrated on symmetry and stuff. And so I think it's very important to talk to a therapist that knows that works with OCD because you do have a chance of just like sharing your information, your OCD fears with somebody who is not completely aware, and they would for sure support you and for sure be there for you, but they might not be able to help you 100% the way you can be helped.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think oftentimes there are some therapists who will say that they treat a long list of conditions, but it's so important when you're trying to find a therapist or someone who you can work with if you do think you have OCD to find someone who specializes in OCD because even a majority of clinical psychologists even don't really know what OCD is like just because it's so misunderstood by other people. Um, so I think that also keeping that in the back of your mind that a lot of times, a lot of therapists, if they specialize in, let's say, talk therapy or something that's not specifically related to OCD, like ERP, then just knowing that there may be a little confusion. And that I think also advocating for yourself and trying to get an OCD diagnosis and trying to seek out treatment that will help you the most and trying to find an ERP specialist. Like here on No CD, finding their incredible therapists and great resources who can help you to better reach that diagnosis and find the help and support that you need.
I like also the question from Jacob.
Oh,
How
yes,
do
an
I determine
excellent.
what thoughts are intrusive and what aren't? I'm pretty sure any thought that makes me have anxiety would be an intrusive thought, but not 100% sure. With this, I just think that if you're asking yourself this question, the chance is this is an intrusive thought. If you're really doubting your thought or your feeling, it's probably an intrusive thought or intrusive like feeling that, or a feeling that was is that is as a result of an intrusive thought. What do you think about that, Kathryn?
Yeah, no, I think whenever OCD will try to make us doubt whatever and everything possible. So I think also learning in the process, like, oh, maybe this is an intrusive thought. Maybe it's not an intrusive thought, and even sitting with that uncertainty there. Because I know even for some people, that whole idea of trying to figure out, oh, is this OCD or is this not OCD? That can even get into the realm of compulsions and feed into it because someone's like, oh, well, maybe I'm actually a bad person, or is this my OCD? So I think also just in every situation, which I feel like a broken record at this point, but just learning to sit with that uncertainty and learning to sit with the discomfort of not knowing the answer, I think is probably what I've taken away the most from OCD treatment and have tried, have brought that with me into like every situation, especially where my OCD tries to take, the driver's seat and tries to gain all the control back. I just know that in those situations, what's going to give me the most control is by not um, feeding into it by trying to gain that certainty.
Also, I would like to add, I would like to give some encouragement to people because I remember when I was at the stage of like just like starting my recovery, and people were like, my therapist was saying, you just need to learn to sit with anxiety, just sit with anxiety and make sure that you, and it was so
Mm.
hard at first. And I was getting so discouraged because I was thinking, so what? I have to sit with like uncertainty for the rest of my life and have all these like crazy like sensations and feelings that I don't like. But just think about just a human, like any human being. Like the more we do something, the easier it becomes. Like just remember how all of you, or like if you're driving a car, if you know how to drive, do you remember your first ride? Like you had to be so careful and pay attention to everything and put so much effort. And the more you do it, it just becomes so automatic. And I feel like the more you sit with uncertainty, the more automatic it becomes too. And when you have intrusive thoughts, it really, really, really gets so much easier to um, just like wire those pathways in your brain and just use it and do it as a junk mail. Just like, oh, okay, like sometimes you receive mail and you're like, okay, I need this later and this is just junk. And you just throw it in the recycling bin.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's definitely like a muscle that gets easier to exercise. And I've been in OCD recovery for a while now. I started my like OCD recovery process when I was a sophomore in high school. And now I'm a sophomore in college. So I've definitely come a really long way since then. And I know at like the beginning of my recovery process, and when I was first in treatment, I was in residential treatment for a while. And for me, learning that was so scary. It was so daunting. I'm like, wait, why am I sitting and purposely putting myself in these anxiety provoking situations? Like, this is just going to make me more anxious and it's going to make everything worse. But like Julia said, the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more automatic it becomes. Like now, and this is meant, I'm trying to think like almost 4 years later, I'm at a point where I'm just setting up exposures for myself just throughout my day. And that's just like something where my OCD will say something to me like, oh, you need to work more on this. And the exposure will be like, okay, I'm going to stop now and I'm just not going to touch it anymore when it be like a homework assignment. So I think just knowing that the recovery process, things become a lot easier the longer you are in the recovery process and the more you resist your OCD and the more you sit with the uncertainty, the easier it becomes.
I like the question from Angel B.
Oh, yes. There we go.
I think that this is a very common OCD symptom, and I've had that too for sure. So I think that it needs to be treated the same way as any other OCD topic. And I really think that it doesn't matter what kind of OCD you have, it all the treatment approach is the same for every topic. So if you're trying to tell intrusive thoughts, well, in those are intrusive thoughts. You just have to sit with this uncertainty and just be like, yeah, okay, maybe I am. And I really love to be very sarcastic with my OCD, and I've had exactly same thoughts. I know how hard or how debilitating it can be, but try to be very sarcastic and just be like, yeah, I'm complete psycho. I'm probably going to have some kind of psychotic break right now, and just, yeah, it's coming. I already feel it. It probably already happened. It probably like it's, and just be the more sarcastic you get, the less your OCD. Just try to agree with those thoughts, and it's obviously going to increase your anxiety at first, but eventually, if you're not getting into your compulsions, if you're not going to try to ask other people or reassure yourself or analyze or go on YouTube or on Google to find all those questions, or analyze and compare yourself to people that have schizophrenia, if you just sit with that uncertainty, eventually you will teach your brain that this is just a trigger, and it's not that important. Your brain doesn't need to react in a such an aggressive way, in a such an anxious way to those thoughts. So just the more you sit with this, again, the same thing. The more you sit with this uncertainty, um, the the stronger you become, and the weaker OCD gets.
Exactly. Yeah, I know some people, I know how you're saying you deal with it using sarcasm. I've had like some friends who have turned their intrusive thoughts into songs and have recorded them and have listened back at them for like exposures and kind of learning and gaining some of that power back from your OCD. And there are so many different ways that you can approach, exposures surrounding your intrusive thoughts. And you can even get pretty creative with it. Um, yeah, but I think just knowing that OCD will try to latch on to so many different themes and so many potential fears, but just recognizing that at the end of the day, it is OCD and that the best way to deal with it is through ERP and through just learning to sit with it, which definitely does take time. But like we've said so many times during this live, the easier it becomes. Yeah,
I would like to also address a question from Karen.
yeah.
Yep. So the question at the top.
Or, okay.
My son's he's 19. OCD is so bad. Yep. So again, because we're not really licensed professionals, we can't really give this kind of advice. But um, I heard a lot of people do require inpatient, and they go through this process, and it really helps. For like, it's really beneficial for some people. And it sounds like a really typical OCD, having a lot of rumination, a lot of thoughts all the time. That's how I was at my worst with OCD. The only time that I got, and even during the sleep, honestly, when you're when you're having your very severe OCD episode, your obsessions, they can come up in your dreams too, and
Mm,
that's very exhausting, and it's very hard, and you wake up the first thing in the morning, before you even open your eyes, your brain just kind of like resets and like starts again. So you have your obsessions right away, the first thing, and the first thing in the morning. And what was really helpful for me is to set up um, 5 minutes increments of time, and do no matter what. I just have to sit for 5 minutes and refuse my compulsions. In this case, is rumination. So for 5 minutes today, for only 5 minutes, I'm going to sit down, and every time the thought comes in, I'll just say to myself, this is OCD, I'm moving on. I'm not paying attention, I'm moving on. It comes up again the second right after that. Maybe in a different way, maybe in the same way, but you just stick to the same plan. For 5 minutes, I only have 5 minutes. I'm going to sit with this anxiety, and I'm going to say every time a feeling or a thought is going to come in, I'm going to say, this is OCD symptom. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to pay attention. and try to increase it every day for like 1 more minute. So like the next day it's going to be 6 minutes, 7 minutes. And I know from my personal experience, when you see results, it just gets so encouraging and you want to do more. You want to do more because you really start to feel like you're getting your power back. But it doesn't have to be, nobody with severe OCD would wake up one day and just say, oh, I'm cured now, I'm fine. Like nobody will. It has to be a very slow process. And when it's so severe, it needs to start from slow increments of time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think setting those exposures up for yourself and designating those chunks of time to working on your OCD can be so beneficial. But I also wanted to go back to your previous comment about just like treatment options, just sharing a little bit of like my experience with that, because I've gone through many different types of treatment for my OCD. And like we both said, we're not clinicians, we're not professionals, so we can't give that professional advice, but we can share our own experiences with it. So for me, when my OCD was really, really, really severe, um, going to therapy one time a week was not sufficient enough. It wasn't what I needed, to the point, just because it my OCD was absolutely like all consuming. It overtook my life. So what my parents and like my therapist at the time, what we realized, which would help me the most, would be going to residential treatment. And then over time, I've gone through partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient programs. So I think definitely that's something to consult with a therapist or an OCD specialist about. Just seeing what's right for you and knowing that what might work for one person and what might really benefit one person may not be the best treatment option for them. So knowing that there are so many different routes to take.
And also, Karen asked about, in addition, can thinking be a compulsion? Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like rumination is one of that's one of my biggest compulsions, and that's definitely can be. And the scariest part about that is that it's so internal that nobody can see it. You can look absolutely fine on the outside, but inside you're just going nuts with your thoughts. You're just trying to analyze and figure out, and you're just so much in your head, trying to kind of find a resolution to your problem. So absolutely, thinking is a compulsion. Avoidance, I think that avoidance is a compulsion because, again, you're trying to either escape from your fear, or you're trying to push it down. And when you do that, again, you just multiply it, you just make it worse.
Definitely. Yeah, anything can become an obsession in so many different, and anything can potentially become a compulsion. So there's really no limits that OCD sets. Okay. Oh, here's another question by Karen. Typically, how long does it take for someone to see results from ERP? Does it depend on how often the exposures are being done? Is it best to do exposures in a program for hours at a time?
I can
So I
share
think this is really. Oh no, sorry, you could go.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. No, no, it's fine. You can go.
I think I can only share just my personal experience again, since I'm not a clinician. But for me, when I started doing ERP like very intensively, I think I started seeing results in a couple of weeks, but it wasn't like something seriously like big results and huge relief. But I started to notice that I'm gaining my power back, and it was a very gradual process. But I think that it, for specifically for me, it took a couple of weeks to see some results. Clearly, not it's not like I was 100% back to normal, because it was so fresh. This like OCD trauma was so fresh that I couldn't believe that I'm actually doing this work and I'm getting better. So it definitely takes time. But I
Yeah,
think you're really trying to reduce your compulsions and refuse your compulsions, reduce your like reaction to them, you will start to see, and your son will start to see results pretty quickly.
Yeah, I definitely think that with ERP, it does take time to see results, especially depending on what you're choosing to focus on. Because I know for me, I have like so many different like compulsions and different obsessions. So, like when you do ERP for a specific theme or a specific obsession or compulsion, targeting that, you're targeting that one thing. So, also, what's so important is like in your treatment, especially when you're working with an exposure therapist. Like creating that exposure hierarchy for yourself. So, kind of giving yourself like starting off with like easier exposures and then slowly working up to those super hard exposures, tackling those things that are much more difficult for you. And I think it can also be super encouraging when you start to see that progress that you're making. And even if it's through like things that are less of an issue for you and are maybe minor parts components of your OCD, that can still be so incredible just seeing that you're making that progress and being like, wait, I'm actually making progress. I'm starting to gain my life back, even if it's just in tiny little increments. So I think that that can definitely take time and depend on the individual. But when it does happen, you'll definitely start to notice it, or your son will in this case. Okay.
Gabe Knopfer about a question about how do I stop trying to reassure myself when OCD makes me think about if I'm currently depressed or will become depressed. I also, that's one of the my OCD topics too, and so I know how it feels. And again, I've read this article somewhere, and I can't really remember right now exactly what was the article, but it basically said that when you have OCD, it's really you have like these like four underlying core fears, and one of them was like one of the core fears was like dying or being alone or like being rejected, and one of them was experiencing suffering forever. So basically passing this threshold and not being able to come back anymore. So for example, I know with myself when I had that when I had this OCD, for me it was like I need to make sure that I do everything to stay happy and motivated and not let myself get any like I would not allow myself to feel upset for even 1 second. And if I did, I was getting very anxious because I think that underlying fear was like of crossing this threshold and just becoming depressed for the rest of my life and this constant endless suffering. And again, number one thing that helped me overcome this was sitting with uncertainty. The kind of similar thing to like schizophrenia topic. Well, yeah, maybe I will become depressed, maybe I will not. Maybe I am depressed now, who knows? I'm not gonna try to figure this out, and I'm gonna live my life like I don't even have those thoughts, and we'll see what happens. So again, the same thing, I would just ask myself how I would feel and what I would do if I did not have these OCD feelings and obsessions right now. And everything else I put in the OCD bucket, and I pretend like, and I just live my life like those feelings and thoughts are not there. And I'll see what happens. And maybe try the same thing. I know how hard it can be, and I know how creative your brain can get. And especially with this topic, this was a big one for me. So yeah, Catherine, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing I know that I've experienced a lot, like similar to this, is that whole idea of obsessing about whether your OCD is going to get worse again. That was a really big one for me, where I would just obsess and ruminate about oh, what if my OCD is going to get bad again? What if I'm going to get to that point where I was a few years ago or a few months ago? And like living with severe OCD can be traumatic. It can be such a painful experience. So it would make sense that you would have these obsessions and all these fears and start ruminating about whether or not it's going to return to that similar state. But like Julie said before, just really taking the approach of just sitting with the uncertainty. Like, I don't know if it's going to get bad. I don't have the power to predict the future. I don't know any of that. But all I know is what I can do is just continue on with my exposures, continue on with my treatment, and continue on sitting with the uncertainty. And that's what I do have control over, and that's what I do know. See.
I think this answer also kind of touched on Clara's question about I feel like the reason I have been struggling with depression is because I'm scared I'm going to feel this way forever. Again, like one of those underlying core fears, being afraid of struggling or suffering forever with this certain feeling that's very triggering for a specific person, and it's very different for different individuals.
Definitely. Should we maybe answer like one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Um,
Really feel bad for skipping some questions.
I know.
Guys.
There's so many great questions. Hmm.
So Chris Gamer, are we asked to remind us that we skipped his question? So maybe we can look at that really quick.
Yeah. Let me look.
I
Oh,
wanted
here
to.
we go.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask if false memory OCD is left untreated for a while, can it get worse? As in, could things around the topic feel real?
I feel like if you just left it alone and really like didn't pay attention to that, probably it probably exactly what ERP stands for. But I'm assuming that in this case, um, you left it untreated, meaning you ruminated and analyzed and thought about it and analyzed again and tried to figure it out and like search for compulsions to make it better or make your anxiety kind of get better. So, yes, I think that absolutely this topic can get so much worse with time because the more time you ruminate and the more time you spend analyzing or trying to find the answer to your questions, your OCD questions, the worse it gets. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that applies to any theme of OCD that someone may have. Like the longer you're engaging in these compulsions and like the digger or the deeper you're digging yourself into that like OCD rut, the harder it is to get out and the harder or just the more consuming it can be. So I think that's the case with anything, and especially with I definitely know with like false memory OCD. If you keep on engaging in the compulsions, it's gonna get worse and it's not gonna get better. So I think knowing and recognizing that OCD is a cycle and it's about breaking that cycle. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts you think that we should add, Julia?
I just want to say to all you guys that you're all amazing and you can do it. And just the fact that you're here watching this and educating yourself means that you're on the right way, on the right path. And I honestly believe in every one of you because I know that no matter how bad OCD can get, we all can get better. And we have such a great community here of people that really willing to help and support each other. And have such a great question. So I mean, I don't know. I just have all the positive. I really send you all very positive vibes because I really have a good feeling that we can all um, get better together.
Yeah, I think that even though it seems beyond daunting, conquering your OCD and getting better is so possible. And I know that I can speak from my own experiences. For so long, I didn't think I was going to get better. I thought that I was just going to remain in the same place, trapped in my OCD. But with exposure and response prevention, with treatment, it truly does get better. And each of you have the ability to do that. And you're warriors for living and fighting OCD daily. So I just wanted to thank you all for tuning in and also thank Julia for joining me today and joining us today and all your amazing questions. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.